from the 32nd chapter of Genesis. The same night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" He said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with human beings and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Grace and peace to you all in the name of our still speaking God, who loves us just the way we are, who loves us too much to let us stay that way forever. Will you pray with me? May these words of my mouth, and may the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O God. For it is you, you alone, who is our strength and our salvation. Amen. I want to dedicate this sermon this morning to the memory of Walt Thomas. This sermon is not actually about Walt in any way, but my sermon starts with these words that I thought would make him smile. I have gained a newfound appreciation for the game of golf. And I have gained a newfound appreciation for the game of golf. I don't play golf myself. I never have. The most challenging course that I have played was Pirates Cove up in Rapid City, although I didn't get through all 18 holes. But I heard a story this week that caused me to gain a newfound respect for the game of golf. I heard a story about a woman named Leanne Walker who was playing in a PGA Pro tournament. Now, this was not her full-time job anymore. She had left playing golf professionally as a full-time profession years ago. She's now a real estate agent in Los Angeles. But she used to be a professional golfer, and there was a PGA Pro tournament that was near where she was living, and so she decided she would give it a shot. She would enter, and indeed she qualified, and she made it into the tournament. But because she had not been playing at the professional level for years, she was not aware of a rules change that happened last year. There's a new rule that if, while you are putting, your caddy lines you up for your shot, you have to take a step back and then reset yourself before actually taking that shot. That's a new rule. just in the last year. And Leanne Walker did not know anything about it. So she played for 2 full days. And it was on the 15th hole of the second day that she learned about this new rules change. Nobody else had noticed. No one else had called her out on this. But, and this is the thing that I learned about golf that made me appreciate it. In golf, you are supposed to call penalties on yourself even if nobody else has noticed you break the rules. And she did. And because she played for 2 days without knowing about this rule, she ended up calling 58 penalty strokes on herself. But she was honest. She had her integrity, right? That is an integrity move. Now, she ultimately missed the final round of play by 59 strokes. So it really didn't actually matter, right? She had 58 penalty strokes, but she missed the final round of play by 59. Either way, she was going to be done on the second day. But that's not the case for Kate Winsham. Last year, Kate Winsham was the South Dakota High School State Golf Champion. Or at least she was going to be. She had won the state tournament by 3 strokes. And then, when looking at the final scorecards, she realized that she had entered one of her scores wrong, incorrectly. She made a mistake, an honest mistake. She had recorded finishing a hole in 4 strokes when she had actually finished it in 5. Now that 1 stroke didn't actually make a difference, right? She won by 3. It just means that with the correction, she only won by 2 instead of 3. Either way, she would have won the tournament. And no one else had noticed. And she was about to get a medal for being the state champion golfer. And her mistake did not change the outcome of the tournament. Still, she knew that it was an error, and so she reported herself for signing a scorecard with an incorrect score. Do you know what the penalty is for turning in a scorecard that you signed with the incorrect score? My golfers are all nodding. The penalty was total disqualification. Instead of being the state champion, she was disqualified. She didn't even place. That takes something. That takes strength. That takes a real kind of strength. And when I think about that story, I think it's worth asking the question, right? What is loss, really? And what is victory, really? What did she lose? What did she gain? You might not know it by looking at me, but I used to be a tournament-winning wrestling champion. Oh, who am I kidding? You would never guess it by looking at me, right? I do not have the physique of a tournament-winning wrestling champion. And that's actually kind of the point. That's because when I was winning gold medals, I didn't actually wrestle anybody to win them. See, when I was in the 4th grade, I went out for wrestling. I did not like wrestling. It is not something that I enjoy. I would have never chosen to do this myself. But my dad used to wrestle in high school, and he was the Chadron wrestling coach for the elementary and middle schools. And because my dad loved it, and because my dad was the coach, that meant I was on the team, whether I liked it or not. And I sucked at wrestling. I was not good. It was really very bad. Because you see, unlike most wrestlers, I was not very big and I was not very strong. I was actually really small for my age. 4th grade. And wrestlers are matched in their brackets by weight. I was often the only person in my weight bracket. Now, when you are the only person in your weight bracket, you have one of two choices. You can either voluntarily go up to the next weight bracket and wrestle kids that are bigger and stronger and better and enjoy wrestling a whole lot more than you do, or you could win your weight bracket, take your gold medal, and go home. And I didn't really like wrestling. I wasn't very good at it, even when I was not wrestling kids that were noticeably bigger than me. And so most of the time, I just opted to take my gold medal and go home. The only problem with that, of course, is that I never got any better. I never got any stronger. I never learned the skills. I never learned the speed and coordination needed to beat an actual opponent. And so, as I got older and puberty finally caught up with me, and I started to catch up with the other people in my age group, weight-wise, size-wise, I suddenly had to wrestle opponents. And very quickly, I stopped taking home gold medals. Now, wrestling was never something that I was really passionate about. But my time wrestling did teach me a lesson. If you want to get better, if you want to be more, if you want to achieve more, then it takes work. It takes hard work, right? It takes struggle, including loss. It takes loss. Because it's only when we compete against somebody who is better than us that we ourselves get better, right? I mean, if you are hands down better than your opponent, you're not going to get any better against that opponent. You don't need to. It's only by striving against stronger opponents that we become stronger ourselves. That's good advice when it comes to sports, certainly. But it's also good advice when it comes to our relationship with God. It is in striving and struggling with a God who is so much bigger, so much greater, so much more powerful than we ourselves are, that we get to be stretched and shaped into the people that we are meant to be. And think about this story of Jacob, right? Hopefully you recall the larger story of Jacob, right? Jacob was, by any accounting, a crook, a thief, a cheat, a liar. He had made being a scoundrel a profession for his entire life. Right? First, when he was at home, he stole his brother Esau's inheritance through extortion, gaining his brother's inheritance in exchange for a bowl of soup when he was starving. And later, Jacob stole Esau's blessing through deception as he pretended to be Esau in front of his blind and elderly father. After that, Jacob had to skip town, right? Because he knew that Esau was not happy. He knew that Esau was probably going to kick his butt or worse. And so he skipped town. He fled. He ran away from home, having burned those bridges. And he went to go stay with his uncle Laban. And Jacob became very wealthy by cheating Laban out of a large portion of his livestock. When Laban found out, he was furious, so it was time for Jacob to pack up and move again. Right? That's the story of Jacob. Never moving towards something, always running away from something. And that is when this story that I read for you in the 32nd chapter of Genesis takes place. It's when Jacob is once again on the run, running from people that he's cheated, running from his past. And that is when he encounters God. And I think it's so interesting that God does not come to Jacob as this sweet, warm, forgiving presence. That's not what Jacob gets, because that's not what Jacob needs. Rather, God comes to Jacob as a mysterious adversary, appearing out of nowhere in order to challenge Jacob to a wrestling match. And they wrestle together all through the night. Eventually, God knocks Jacob's hip out of joint. But Jacob continues holding on for dear life, refusing to let go until he has gained God's blessing. Jacob is determined to hang on to God no matter the cost, no matter the difficulty. The blessing that Jacob receives includes a new name, Israel, which, depending on how you translate it, either means to struggle with God, to strive with God, or God prevails. The name Israel recalls that struggle that they had through the night together. A struggle which, by the way, leaves Jacob limping as a reminder of this strange face-to-face encounter with God. Over the years as a pastor, I have had opportunities to walk with people during what might be called a crisis of faith. Often it happens in the midst of dark and difficult times, when the faith that people thought that they had, they suddenly realized it isn't enough to get them through the circumstances that they are facing at that moment in life. Crises of faith can also happen in the midst of ordinary times, when a person stops believing in one tiny little piece of Christian doctrine, and suddenly they find that without that one piece, the rest of their beliefs start falling like dominoes, or like a piece of fabric unraveling as one thread is pulled. Personally, I have experienced crises of faith in both of those categories. In those times, you might be tempted to just let go, to just give up. You might feel like God has let go of you, and so you ought to let go of God too. But I can tell you, from my own experience, that if you are able to hold tight to God in those moments, it only makes your grip stronger in the future. It is in these times that we can actually go deeper into faith, to encounter God in new and unexpected ways, that we can live into a more authentic faith if only we will follow Jacob's example and not let go of God until we have received the blessing that we need. Maybe not the blessing that we want, but the blessing that we need. You know, when I was a wrestler, one of the things that my dad told me to get stronger, we had weights in the house. We had the 3 weights. We had the bench press. But one tip that I got was to just push as hard as you possibly can against a wall, like you're trying to knock it over. You never will, of course. You'll never get strong enough to knock that wall over. But you'll get stronger as you strive and fail. Jacob was not strong enough to defeat God, of course, obviously. But that wasn't the point. And it all goes back to that question, what is victory and what is loss? Jacob was defeated. He gained so much. The point for Jacob was that by wrestling with God, Jacob himself became stronger. After being overpowered by God, Jacob had the strength to be reunited with his family, to seek the forgiveness of the brother that he had wronged so many years ago. It was from that moment on that Jacob finally started to live a life of honesty and integrity. Sometimes we can feel overwhelmed. Sometimes we are overwhelmed. I know I have said before in this church, but it bears repeating, that the old line about God will never give you more than you can handle is crap. I can assure you that the Bible makes no such promise. But here's what I think. I don't think God gives us pain and struggle and challenge. That doesn't come from God. That's part of life. But what the Bible does promise is that we are in the midst of it. God is available for us. And that it is in precisely those moments that we can finally learn what it means to really wholly lean on God. In the end, it's not so much about what we believe as it is about who we believe in. It's not so much about our religion, which is something that we have come up with ourselves and are still trying to make sense of. Rather, it's about our relationship. In the strong embrace of God, we are stretched and shaped by struggle. And with God's help, we overcome, even overcoming ourselves. I'll leave you with one of my favorite poems, which is based on this passage of Scripture in the 32nd chapter of Genesis. It's written by Rainer Maria Rilke, who is my favorite poet. He wrote this about that particular passage. I can tell by the way the trees beat after so many dull days on my worried window panes that a storm is coming. The storm, the shifter of shapes, drives on across the woods and across time, and the world looks as if it had no age, a landscape like a line in a psalm book, seriousness and weight and eternity. What we choose to fight is so tiny. What fights us is so great. If only we would let ourselves be dominated, as things do by an immense storm, then we would become strong too, and not need names. When we win with small things, the triumph itself makes us small. What is extraordinary and eternal does not want to be bent by us. I mean the angel who appeared to the wrestlers of the Old Testament. When the wrestler's sinews grew long like metal strings, he felt them under his fingers, plucked like chords of deep music. Whoever was beaten by this angel went away proud and strengthened, and great from that harsh hand that kneaded him like dough, as if to change his shape. Winning does not tempt that man. This is how he grows, by being defeated decisively by constantly greater peace.